See if I can stop that from spinning and set this up to record. Alrighty. What is going on, everybody?
Hey guys.
How's everybody been? I mean, it's already April. But welcome to our new edition of Talking with the Motts.
Health Talk with the Motts.
No, we're talking with the Motts now. We're going to put some knowledge on you guys, share some information. We're actually have changed some things here, the way that we're setting up. We're trying to see if we can still deliver you guys on Instagram and Facebook, the content that we've been delivering, but also record our podcast at the same time. So we have a little bit of a different setup this evening. And the content matter that we want to start to bring to you guys is going to change a little bit as well. We still focus heavily on health and wellness, but understanding that it also means understanding that health and wellness is more than just the physical. So as we've talked about on our podcast, we like to delve into different topics that affect your whole well-being, your mental well-being, your physical well-being, financial well-being. So we want to start to touch on some of that stuff in Talking with the Motts.
All of the things, and it's still Health Talk with the Motts.
Yeah, so I see that people are still populating and coming in. I have swiped away the chat for Facebook because for some reason it covers like almost the entire screen. But feel free to shout out where you're from, who you are, say hello. If you have any questions along the way or anything you want to add, we'll go back and read the comments towards the end. But let's get into it.
Let's go.
So the topic that we've picked for this particular one is actually something that Dana and I have been working on for a while. And that is the topic of perfecting your craft. Something that I feel like is a dying art nowadays. And I don't know if it's the mentality changed or if it's a millennial thing. I don't know what the deal is. But we want to encourage people to pursue things that they're passionate about, encourage people to get back to creating and to perfect whatever it is that they're good at or that they have a passion for.
So I think you need to step back though. So like first and foremost, why do I even have a craft? Like we are honing in on perfecting a craft, but I think we need to start, what is my craft? Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, but that's a product of an individual figuring that out for themselves, right? What are they passionate about? I often think of, like, even for myself, what did I love to do as a child? Like, you think about with children, they're not thinking about, is this going to make me money or can I make a living off of this? What are you sniffing?
Envision.
Envision? You trying to get the vision?
Yes.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so children, they're not thinking about, is this going to make me money first? Most of the time, children do things because they enjoy it. Like, they honestly have some type of passion for it. You know, I think of our kids, like, my daughter loves music. Mm-hmm. Catch her singing all the time. Ask her what she wants to do when she grows up. She's like, I want to have a YouTube channel creating content and music for people.
How crazy is that? Like our kids now, it's like YouTube is a career.
Yeah. I mean, but 30 years ago, like if someone would have told you that like we'd be sitting in front of these personal devices reaching out to millions of people or, you know, across the internet, you know, that was a crazy concept, you know. So, I mean, it's not really, but it's interesting, you know. Some of the passions that we might have had when we were younger, they kind of get smothered or pushed to the side as we try to pursue making a living. And sometimes they're not mutually exclusive. Like, you can marry those two things together, or if you're not able to pursue and make an income off of what you enjoy as your passion, still pursue it in some aspect. You know?
And I would say too, I think it's very important because I think this comes up very often where people are, well, I'm not passionate about anything. I don't have hobbies. So where do I go? Where do I start? So I feel like, as you mentioned, it is important to go back to maybe things that I wouldn't even say necessarily were a fire under you, but maybe things that were just a flicker of interest for you as a child. And then dive into some of those, right? So for example, like let's say you wanted to be an artist as a child, but as a child you were finger painting. Okay, well, maybe we're not gonna make a profession out of finger painting, right? But
I don't know. Some people would buy. I've seen some abstract art that look like finger painting. People probably would buy it.
It may be so, but maybe that was just a flicker. Maybe that wasn't really something that necessarily you're like, yeah, I mean, that was fun, but it's like, whatever. But maybe something in that being an artist, you can be creative in that arena, and then you can trigger and take that flicker into a fire, into a flame, into a passion. I do feel like sometimes people give up too soon because they're like, oh my goodness, I'm doing it, it's kind of hard, and like it's cool, but it's like, I don't know, right? It doesn't wake me up in the middle of the night. It doesn't, fire under me, so maybe that's not my passion. And I think that can be premature because while you do need to explore different things, I do feel like when we talk about passion, I don't necessarily think that everyone just has this born innate thing, I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up, and you just do that. And I think that like in our society, we kind of do a disservice to people in general, because right, like at 18 years old, you're basically told like, hey, so you're gonna leave school and now figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. Okay, go to college or but whatever you choose now is just pretty much gonna affect you forever.
But so to hit on that, the interesting thing about that too is you might have something that you're passionate about that at 18 you were like, oh man, like remember you were talking about at 18 like you wanted to pursue like fashion design or something like that. And the interesting thing is at that age we were usually told like, oh, that's crazy, you can't make no money doing that, or you got to be special to be able to break into that industry. The likelihood of you being able to do that is maybe slim to none, so that gets stifled. And then we say, well, you're probably right, and then we don't do anything with it. So I definitely think it's important to figure out what those passions are, figure out what it was that or is that you enjoy. What are your hobbies? Everybody should have a hobby. I mean, we've talked about and in tomorrow's class we'll talk about self-care, the one that we're doing in Dearborn, but everybody should have a hobby, something that you enjoy doing. So let's transition for a minute, because I briefly want to talk about some of the benefits of developing a craft and perfecting it, because it ultimately is not just necessarily for everybody else to benefit from. Like we think of maybe someone that's like, I want to be a musician or a singer, and we think about them putting out music and benefiting people who enjoy listening to their music, or an artist who might paint and sell their artwork so that the world can enjoy it. But really, I think it starts with you, like as the person, like developing a craft and perfecting it, going through that process is ultimately going to benefit you as a person.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So the first thing that came to mind was discovering more about yourself. Because I know even as I've gotten older, there's certain things that I'm passionate about now that I didn't even know that I had a passion for maybe 5, 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. And it's caused me to learn so much about myself and the things that I want out of life. And it's pretty much started to shape the person that I am now.
And that's why, to a certain extent, I think it's kind of unfair at 18 to tell, like, a child, even though legally they're adult, but tell a child, like, hey, like, make decisions for the rest of your life. Because the reality is most of them don't fully know who they are. They haven't fully, like, especially, like, their brains haven't even developed fully. Like, they still have so much growth to go on that the reality is at that point, if they don't know who they are, they're not going to necessarily be able to resonate with where they should go and what they should exactly do. So I do think that's definitely a good point. Know who you are first and foremost.
And then it makes me think of some of the qualities that you develop as a person. Because like, For example, self-discipline is something you have to learn. You know, when you're developing a craft or whatever, like sometimes you have to get tough with yourself, force yourself to do things at the time that you don't really feel like doing it. And I'll give you a prime example. Like, for those who follow me on any of my social media, I know I am not the king of social media. That would be this lady here. She is the queen. Yeah, shoot, you run the social media page. But for anybody who sees my content, like, I love music. And the hardest thing that I've discovered for me to do is to be able, is like when I'm not really feeling it, you know, like not in the creative mood, to force myself to still practice, work on content. I am a huge perfectionist. Work on still getting it out, even though I don't feel like it's up to par. So it forces, certain things force me to get tough with myself and say, okay, but this is what you love.
Now I will.
Get it out there.
Now I will say, in line with that, there's two different types of motivation: your push and your pull. And I feel like it's so important, especially as you're in that process of honing in on exactly what it is that you're trying to craft and perfecting that you have the pull motivation. You can't have the push, because that's going to be so limited and it's only going to carry you so far. You can only push yourself so long. You have to pull. And in order to get that pull motivation, you have to be clear on your vision. You have to be clear on where you're going, and you have to, as weird as it sounds, look at it every single day. Close your eyes and visualize that, and let that be your driving motivation, because when you have that, it pulls you to want to do more, right? It pulls you to be like, I got to get up and get going, right? Or when you're at work, let's say, your 9-to-5 job, and you're frustrated with the boss and you're frustrated in those things, you can't wait to get home and start honing in on that craft, right? Because you know that is pulling you in the direction that you really want to go, because maybe where you are now is not fully fulfilling. So it has to be that pull motivation.
Yeah. And I wanted to add to that, but I'm going to move on. Because the other thing I was thinking about too is just, you know, in attempting to perfect a craft, like there's a sense of fulfillment in that. You know, and sometimes like we think that the fulfillment comes only after you've mastered what you attempted or sought out to learn. But I mean, there's that sense of fulfillment when you're like, even through failure, like even when you're like, this is just not going the way I want it to go. And when you're continuously working on something and then you finally get over that little hump, like that sense of fulfillment, nothing like it.
Exactly.
There's nothing like it.
It's not a chore, but it really is a matter of you losing yourself within it. And yeah. And
then, I mean, those opportunities, like, that's how you chart your growth. You know, that's how you know that you're growing. Like, things that that you may not have been able to do in the beginning, like those small hurdles that you're accomplishing along the way, like, they mount up.
Yes.
And then next thing you know, you've had so much either growth in that particular field or craft that you're attempting, but growth as a person. Yes. I mean, ultimately. And that's one of the things I think is so important. Like, as people, when we stay stagnant, we're getting left behind. You know, because the world is about growth and development and learning to be better people, learning to be just better in life. And so it's important that you continue to have something so that you're trying to keep up with the train, you know. So I think that's important. So we talked a little bit about the benefits, and I could go on and on about that, but let's talk about like how a person goes about developing their craft and then perfecting it. So one of at least I had 5 steps. I don't know if you had more than that or if you want to add to it. But the 5 that I'll start with is the first one is getting back to your roots and fully understanding like what's your niche, like what are some things that you are good at or at least decent at? Or even if you suck at it, like, do you enjoy it? Because I think ultimately that's one of the important things. Like, you have to enjoy what you're doing. If you don't enjoy it, what are you doing it for?
Exactly. And I will say, like, one thing you just said, for me, for the longest, when people would say, what's your hobbies? What do you enjoy doing? And I'd be like, what do you mean? Sleeping, living? I don't understand that question.
Sleeping. I was like, sleep was not a hobby.
But,
okay. Hey, add me in the chat if you disagree with sleep is not a hobby. I'm sorry.
But for me, especially at the time, I had to realize that I am not one that is naturally gifted in most things. So most things for me, when I choose to do it, is a lot of work. It doesn't come easy. But when you, again, hone in on something that is worth your time to get better at and perfect it, then you're willing to put in that time and you're willing to put forth the effort. Because the beautiful thing about us as humans is we're not like animals that are just running on instinct. We actually have the ability to adapt, to grow, and get better. Right? So the reality is, at least what I've learned over time, is it's okay that you are awful the first few times you do it. But if it's really worth your time, you're going to get better. You're just naturally, if you keep working at it, you're going to get better. It's the inevitable. You're going to get better.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it. I mean, that's what brings us to the second point. I mean, the second step is practice. Mm-hmm. Everybody starts out as a novice or a beginner to some extent, and that's I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but that was like one thing when I got to know you. You were like, yeah, if I, like, in the beginning, if I'm not good at something, I just stop. I don't want to do it. And a lot of people feel that way, but you're going to be bad before you're good. You're going to be good before you're great, right? And you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And learning to be forgiving of yourself and forgiving when you make mistakes, like, is important, because I don't feel like in the world that's a common trait. You know, like, we look at mistakes as a negative thing. Mm-hmm. You make a mistake on your job, you're punished for it to some extent, or maybe at school kids are ridiculed for it, or maybe at your job you're ridiculed. You know, they on your head, they talking about you. But it's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are opportunities to learn. Right. And then what's the quote? You make up in practice what you lack in talent. Okay. Is that kind of how it goes?
Yeah, something like that.
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like I'm on the right track, maybe the wrong train. But it's important that you practice, because you will eventually get over that hurdle. And to some, like, prime example, I remember when I was given vocal lessons, most people have the ability to sing. It's just some people start off in different places.
So did you guys hear what I heard?
I said most people.
My husband just said I could sing.
That's not what I said.
That's what I heard.
I said most people. I didn't say everybody. I said most. So let's clear that up. Yeah. Most people. But
to hone in on what you just said, though, too, I do want to just add, because when you look at successful people in general, most successful people will tell you that they are successful because they were not afraid to fail. I had one person tell me the only difference between where you are and where I am is I was willing to fail more times than you probably were willing to try. And that is huge, right? So the reality is, most of the times we give up before we even get halfway there, right? Mm-hmm. So don't be afraid of the failure, because that is going to be the opportunities to learn. And the more you fail, the more successful you're going to be.
Yeah. So step three, find a mentor. I feel like if you want to learn something, like, you want to learn it from somebody who's done it, you know, or that has the knowledge to be able to share that and impart it on you, so that you can, you know, learn it yourself, and then next thing you know, it's a transition period. You might mentor somebody else later. You know what's funny is I feel like a common thing that people do though is we take advice or we allow people to try to mentor us who have never done what we want to do.
All the time.
And that's the naysayers, the haters, what, you know what I'm saying? Like we can be like, oh, I want to. What's a common one in sitcoms and movies is I want to move to New York or California and I want to become an actor, and people are like, oh, you can't become an actor, like that's a pipe dream. But I mean, when you look at like the movie industry and the entertainment industry, how many people are getting into acting in their like late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s?
And right, and the reality is it was somebody, why not you? Mm-hmm. Right? Kind of with my post today, but I was just thinking in general, like, why are we valuing the opinion of people that don't have to live with the consequences of the actions, right? Like, the reality is, if you have not walked that mile, then you don't have the right to tell me what to do or what not to do. Just point blank. Sorry, love you, but your opinion means nothing. Like, you're sitting at the same table as me, so how you gonna tell me how to move forward? Yeah. And I think with that whole mentor thing, sometimes though, you might not have people in your own circle that can be a satisfying mentor, and you might need to find people that like are online or people that are, you know, and today in this world, we live in a life of information and people are willing and wanting to help. And to add to that as well, I'd like to say that like another way to master or perfect what you're doing is to teach it to other people. Mm-hmm. So when you teach that craft, again, you're getting better at that craft because you're so good at it. That's how you know you learned something. You can teach it to somebody else. So if the first person that you go to, you try to mentor or try to get mentorship from, and they're not willing, go to the next person. Go to the next person. Keep it moving till you find somebody that is willing to put in the time. And a lot of times people they want to share their knowledge with you. Like, they would love for somebody to be like, hey, like, can you help me out? I think about in our company, like, that's one thing that that's
the backbone.
Well, and one of the diamonds was saying is like, I wish like my team would call me more. Like, I wish that people would like, I want to get you guys where I am. Like, and so, you know, for them, they reach down, but it's like, there's nothing wrong with reaching up.
Yeah. And, I mean, to that extent, like having somebody who can help you navigate, you know, it's like a person who knows where the landmines are, mm-hmm. and they can tell you, okay, avoid this, avoid that, turn left here. I mean, it's going to save you time. Mm-hmm. You know, I can't tell you how many times that, you know, people struggle unnecessarily just because they won't get a mentor.
Right.
Or get somebody to teach you.
It might save you time. It might save you money too. Mm-hmm. Right. Especially if you're trying to get into the game and like, let's count our pennies. Like, you know, you could save money, time, and a lot of heartache.
Yeah. Invest in yourself, you know. So the next one I got is learning to develop perspective. Because this one is important because like in your journey and along your way, you're going to have times when problems will arise.
Absolutely.
But having perspective like helps you to, instead of focusing on the problem, be like solution oriented. Mm-hmm. So that you can say, okay, like, man, I have no idea how to figure this out. What are my ways that I can get around this? Yeah. Who can I talk to get around? Like, who? And that's why the mentor is important, because mm-hmm. you can be like, hey, I'm having this problem. How did you overcome it?
Right. And I don't know if that's somewhat of a generation thing, but it's like, I feel like a lot of times too, when I talk to younger people, they're like, oh, I don't have a ride. And I'm like, but there's Uber and buses and like you got feet though. Yeah. Right? You can walk.
That's the funny thing.
You can,
see, we grew up.
Like,
we didn't have Uber when we were kids. You know, it was your feet, the bike, or the bus.
Right. I'm I'm just so confused because it's like people have these things that seem like monster problems, and I'm like, okay, so that's not the solution. So be solution oriented. So what can you do in this situation?
Yeah.
Who can you call? What can you do? Right? Solution oriented. Always be solution oriented. Look for the solution to the problem. Don't just dwell on all the problems.
Yeah. And a lot of times you'll get people that try it once and they're like, oh, that didn't work. But I mean, you haven't tried it enough to get perspective, you know, like trying different, you know, solutions to a problem that you might be having so that you have perspective. And then it also has an effect on your attitude, you know, how you view it. You know, if you focus on the problem, then your thought process is going to be negative. And you're gonna want to quit. You're gonna want to walk away and be like, hey, you know what, this is not for me. But when you're solution oriented, like, and keep trying, and keeping that positive attitude, regardless, you're gonna push through and you're gonna be able to perfect your craft. Yep. So let's move on to, because we're running out of time here, let's move on to the very last one, and that is mastery of, or attaining mastery. So that is like when everything just comes together. All the moving parts and pieces that you have, all the years of dedication to practice, like when it all comes together. And the funny thing is, I feel like, you know, we have like certificates and degrees for certain things in the world where people are like, you're a master of this. Like I think of in my trade, like we have master electricians. And really to be a master electrician, it's the fact that you've shown that you've worked so many hours, and then they take a test to, you know, show that you know a certain amount where they can say that you're quote unquote a master. But when I think of, when it comes to still perfecting your craft, I mean, I just don't feel like we should be reliant on somebody else saying that, hey, you're a master of this. Like, you know, and like when you're good at something, you know it. Because you feel like, can't nobody tell me that I'm not the bomb at this.
Right.
You know.
And can I say this too? I hope this isn't contrary to the whole topic, but the reality is to always be looking for ways to expand. Right? So even in this place, okay, now I am perfected in this area and arena, so go find another one. Right? Like, so now...
Are you saying diversify?
Diversify.
Yeah, let's stop the podcast. Shut it all down. Let's counter into it. No, I'm playing.
No, because here's the reality too, is we as humans thrive on purpose and continuous movement. And I think sometimes, one, we either try to do all of the things really well and then we are terrible at everything, right? Or we get really, really good at the one thing and then we just squeeze the life out of it, right? So get really, really good, master it, perfect it, and then move on to the next thing you're going to hone in on.
Yeah. Then
the next thing you're going to hone in on. Until really, like, we're always constantly learning. A lot of times when people get older, that they're no longer learning. Their brain is no longer active. They're no longer moving. And it's so important that we always are active and moving.
I'm thinking too, you don't want to get bored. I know me personally, I like a challenge. If something doesn't continue to stay challenging, or if I can't find new ways to make it challenging, it's going to start to bore me. Now, it doesn't mean I'll walk away completely from it, but, you know, most human, we like to be challenged, you know, to a certain extent. We like to have our senses engaged, our mental, our mind engaged, our emotions, you know. So if something is not giving you that feeling, maybe that's not your niche. Maybe that's not what you're passionate about. Maybe that's not what you should be pursuing. But continue to find those things, because you're going to find at different points in your life, you're going to be passionate about different things. You know, you're going to develop different skills at different points in your life. So I think it's important kind of to hit on what you said, you know, keep finding different things, but you don't want to be the jack of all trades, master of none. I guess that's the caveat to that, you know. So certainly if there's something that you're pursuing and you have a passion for it, master that first before moving on to something else, but also continue to challenge yourself. And remember that no one can really tell you, well, let me rephrase this. Anyone can be a master. Anyone can be a master of something. You just have to work hard enough to attain it.
Absolutely.
So that's all I got. Podcast over. Shut it down. Goodbye. Now I'm playing. So let me go back and read the comments. Do you want to really quickly give a do you want to really quickly talk about, let me stop this here, events we have coming up?
So absolutely, guys. So tomorrow evening we do have an in-person class. So would love for anybody that is in our area to come out and join us. So we will be at the Big V in Dearborn. We'll go ahead and put all the information to that class in the notes. But this is going to be all about self-care, self-love. So this is a very, very dear subject to my heart because we live just in a really high-strung environment and world. And so it's so important that we take time for ourselves. So this is going to be an awesome, awesome class. So looking forward to hanging out with everybody. And that will be tomorrow evening. Again, we'll put all of the information in the notes. Also, keep in mind all of the replays are uploaded to our YouTube. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe, share, rate, and review. The comments help to boost us as well. So it's DNA Wellness. Also, our podcast can be found on any of the different platforms. So whether you listen on Stitcher, Google Play, what's the iPhone people's thing?
Oh, I don't know.
iTunes?
Oh, yeah. We're not an
Sorry.
Apple family. Come on now.
But wherever you
I know I just started a
wherever
phone
you
war.
listen to podcasts, we are uploaded there, Castbox as well. But yeah, the best thing and most important thing you can do is to share, comment, like the content if you find it of value. Yeah. If you do not find it of value, then you can go away.
Yes. I just heard what you said. That was funny. Yes, Satara, it's DNA Wellness on YouTube. Yeah, you got the letters right. And we'll put the link to the event in the comments down below. So those who want to show up and join us, feel free. We'd love to have you guys there. Come hang out with us. We typically have a lot of fun. So with that being said, we'll close out with you guys. Thank you everybody for giving us your time and attention. We will see you guys on the next episode of Talking with the Motts. Till then, everybody.
It's Health Talk with the Motts. That's not right.
Talking with
Bye,
the
guys.
Motts. Talking with the Motts.
That's not a thing.
We're going to have a theme song and everything. Just wait. All right, good night.